Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed. Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what weight would they fight?
Well,
it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my.
Joe Rogan was stunned after hearing that Jake Paul had offered Francis Ngannou the chance to be his next opponent following the cancellation of his fight with Gervonta Davis. On his podcast, Rogan called a matchup insane and borderline reckless for the YouTuber turned boxer. The UFC veteran turned boxing powerhouse is one of the most dangerous punchers in combat sports, and Rogan questioned whether Jake truly understood what he was getting himself into. Still, he admitted the matchup would be a massive spectacle if it ever actually happened.
Nikista calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikista calls Francis and says, hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out. And Francis says, all right. And Francis says, well, how can I help you? Nikista says, well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out. And Francis says, all right, but specifically, how can I help you? Nikista takes a third swing at the bat. He says, well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out. And Francis asks him again, okay, what specific...
When Jake Paul's exhibition date with Gervonta Davis fell through amid serious legal allegations stacking up against Davis, Paul and his team scrambled for a replacement. Among the names floated was Francis Ngannou, the former UFC heavyweight champion turned crossover boxer whose size, power, and notoriety make him one of the most dangerous men in striking sports.
Davis saga, I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more, we don't think it'll happen. I think
Michael Bisping pointed out the extraordinary size gap in the rumored fight between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou by referencing how Paul's original target was Gervonta Davis, a much smaller lightweight before that fell through. Bisping remarked that shifting from Davis to Ngannou puts Paul on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to physical dimensions and challenge. He highlighted that such a jump from facing someone small to someone with Ngannou size and power creates a mismatch not just in skill or record, but in raw mass reach and legitimacy of threat.
Like Mike Tyson, who's 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua, and that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props, I'd give him his credit, and you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout, because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, you know, an admirable thing to do, and it would be Jake Paul taking on somebody bigger with more.
According to Francis Ngannou, the outreach from Jake Paul's team about stepping in as a replacement for Gervonta Davis caught him off guard. He said the proposal arrived abruptly and felt misaligned with his current goals. While money was reportedly discussed, Ngannou rejected the idea, stating that the terms and circumstances didn't make sense for him. He questioned how switching from Davis to him was being framed as a logical option, emphasizing that this wasn't about payday. It was about the fight making professional sense.
To fight Jake to replace Gervonta, I'm like, who's Jake? You know, like, I was so confused, you know, like, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, you know, he's fighting. I'm like, no, bro, come on, don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say like, they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you, I'm not just interested. He make no sense for me. It's not my what I'm.
Former UFC champion Daniel Cormier issued a blunt warning to Jake Paul about the looming consequences of facing Francis Ngannou. Cormier points to Ngannou's devastating power and the sheer mismatch in experience and physicality, implying that Paul isn't equipped to deal with a strike-heavy heavyweight coming from a mixed martial arts background. He frames the scenario as one where Paul could suffer serious consequences for stepping in with someone whose strengths are far beyond what Paul has routinely faced. The message is clear. This isn't just about money or spectacle. The risk outweighs the reward.
Jake Paul goes from fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be a ploy. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis. Because all it takes is for one.
Cormier questions Jake's motives, suggesting it's more about publicity than genuine competition. He adds that Jake underestimates what it takes to fight a heavyweight who can punch through gloves. In MMA, Ngannou's power is legendary, but in boxing, it becomes even more concentrated. Cormier warns that if Jake enters the ring with Francis without understanding the difference between MMA's striking and boxing defense, it could be a very short night for him.
Right? Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight, and that's it.
Several analysts have flagged the proposal for Jake Paul to face Francis Ngannou on extremely short notice as a risky move both for Paul and for the broader fight narrative. They highlight that Paul's original opponent, Gervonta Davis, pulled out late, prompting Paul's camp to approach Ngannou as a replacement. However, as Ngannou pointed out, stepping in this late makes no sense for his career trajectory. From a strategic standpoint, the short notice nature means Paul wouldn't have adequate time to prepare for a heavyweight like Ngannou, who possesses elite power and experience. Many analysts are drawing comparisons between proposed Jake Paul versus Francis Ngannou clash and the actual bout between Tyson Fury and Ngannou. Their reasoning centers on crossover appeal, stylistic mismatch, and spectacle over conventional boxing merit. Just as Fury faced a former MMA champion in Ngannou and struggled more than expected, a Paul and Ngannou fight would follow a similar framework. A social media famous boxer stepping up to face a monstrous athlete with elite power. In Fury's case, despite being a heavyweight champ, he admitted Ngannou made it one of the toughest fights of his last decade.
What I find interesting about this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. I'll anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this, and you'd have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Yeah, Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua is a 2-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, like, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Cha Sonnen recently weighed in on the looming matchup between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou with a mix of amusement and real curiosity. He noted that from a purely sporting lens, the fight doesn't have the balance of a traditional contest. It's more about testing how much punishment Paul can absorb. Sonnen reminded listeners that when Ngannou faced Tyson Fury, a seasoned heavyweight with boxing pedigree and a size advantage over Paul, it took just one clean shot to drop him. In his view, if Fury had trouble surviving Ngannou's power, the idea that Paul could walk through those same punches without major risk seems far-fetched.
Francis says fighting Jake Paul wouldn't make sense. But what in the hell do you think Tyson Fury got for boxing you? These aren't mean things for me. This is a reality. Tyson Fury knew there was a check. Name one person you'd rather see Jake Paul fight than Francis Ngannou. Is a real challenge. How Tyron Woodley, Ben Askren, Anderson Silva, Mike Tyson. How those aren't real challenges, I don't know. But this is the story as we're told. And do you see where that would satisfy so much? Do you see where that would force even the biggest hater to be quiet? And my job for something to make sense is the biggest check against the easiest opponent. I cannot think of anything I would rather see.
Jake Paul has built a name through big promotions and attention-grabbing stunts. But this time the idea doesn't seem to connect. Unlike his previous fights, which involved opponents closer to his weight and experience, this one feels unbalanced and lacks direction. Observers think that Jake's attempt to stay relevant through unusual matchups might finally be losing its effect. There's a growing sense that this event has been created for attention rather than competition, which explains why ticket sales have failed to rise even after weeks of advertising and interviews.
Exhibition and he's retired. Tank still being in the competitive nature of the sport throws this one completely off for me, and the fact that Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is. Right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport. He's bad for the sport. He doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense and he's making a mockery of things, this is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching guys like...
Chael Sonnen adds that Jake's confidence and willingness to take on fighters far above his level are entertaining. But facing someone like Francis is an entirely different story. He emphasizes that Jake doesn't have the size, power, or chin of Tyson Fury. And if Fury could only take one punch, it's hard to imagine Jake taking even that.
Bludgeoning. You can't even grab a hold of the guy or try to squeeze him. You can only bludgeon and be bludgeoned back. I think you're got an uphill battle to question somebody. But they have been very effective in doing just that to Jake. Hey, you started with this NBA guy, and then even those MMA guys, they're not boxers. And then when you got around to the boxers, but they weren't current boxers. Then when you get around to the current boxers, they're not big enough boxers. And I just loved it. When I heard that Francis Ngannou might be going against Jake, I loved it. I mean, what's that gonna look like? How many of those shots from Francis can you take? Tyson Fury, if you're talking clean, Tyson Fury only took one. Everything else, Tyson was able to roll with. Big Francis only had to hit him one time. Like, that's like...
Tim Bradley highlighted how the cancellation of the planned Davis versus Jake Paul fight had repercussions far beyond the two fighters rather than just a matchup falling through. Bradley noted that promoters, broadcasters, event venues, sponsors, and marketing partners all lost money when the deal collapsed. The bout was expected to produce major pay-per-view sales and sponsorship revenue, but legal trouble surrounding Davis forced networks to pull back and brands to protect their images.
Tank, let's get on Tank real quick. You gotta be the dumbest dude, in the history of boxing, bro. $40 million, dog, down the drain. You gotta be the dumbest dude I've ever seen in the history of boxing, bro. Seriously. I'm like, $40 million, bro. Wealth. Literally wealth, bro. Going down the drain. I don't understand it. I can't make the... I don't understand it. But I'll tell you this. MVP promotions, whatever the hell y'all call it, most valuable promotions, shit, more like rookie promotions. Yeah, more like rookie promotions. You didn't know what you were dealing with. You had no clue. This has always been down Tank's alley, man. Now, let me just say one thing.
Meanwhile, money had already been spent on production, promotion, and logistics. Much of that investment is likely gone now. Bradley used the episode to expose the precariousness of the commercial side of boxing. When one fighter's reputation falters, everyone who backed the event ends up paying the price. The potential showdown between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou presents a stark contrast in size and power, one that demands a fundamentally different approach from Paul. Ngannou, a heavyweight, typically around 260 pounds, brings a level of raw strength that rivals the hardest punchers in combat sports. Meanwhile, Paul has been accustomed to facing much lighter opponents and operated with a game built on speed, movement, and spectacle, not survival. For Paul to even begin to compete against a force like Ngannou, his training camp would have to pivot dramatically, from increasing muscle mass and improving durability to fundamentally rethinking footwork, sparring dynamics, and conditioning. What works for lightweight opposition simply won't cut it when facing a heavyweight who hits like a freight train. In short, many analysts believe Paul cannot treat this matchup like another influencer boxing spectacle. He'd need months of serious, specialized preparation with top coaches if this fight would make any competitive sense.
It would be something unique. It would be something incredible. It's the same reason that I would be intrigued by a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, although I would never advise Jake Paul to take a Anthony Joshua fight. I wouldn't advise him to take a Francis Ngannou fight either, because as much as Anthony is far better, which we saw when they actually fought, Joshua slept Francis Ngannou quicker than me after 2 melatonin. I mean, it was Quick, fast, in a hurry, completely dominant. But we also saw Francis Ngannou go toe-to-toe with the heavyweight champion of the world at that time. Yes, he was out of shape. We understand that. But Tyson Fury on that night got the shock of his life when Francis Ngannou not only went toe-to-toe, but put him down and danced on him. To this day, I think that fight could have gone Francis's way. Point being, there are levels to this shit. Not just in boxing, but in combat in general. And the size difference Francis would have over Jake would be incredible, but it would have been a great event, and a lot of people would have tuned in. Francis, though, is saying that's not happening.
How can they go from like Gervonta Davis to Francis Ngannou? Like, I mean, Gervonta Davis is a fantastic boxer, but and is a one-shot knockout artist. But come on, like the weight different and everything, it make no sense.
It's a good point. I mean, obviously, Francis is right about the weight difference, but it's a good point in general for what do you do next? Jake has sparred guys like Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, Montana Love to try to prepare for Tank Davis. And even if you book this fight on December 12th or December 19th, that's still a completely different fight than you were going into. Completely different matchup, size-wise, skill-wise, the things that you're going to need to even try to compete if it's